Okay, sit yourself onto your left. Come into a good cross leg position and just feel that you can bring levelness to your seat bones. So just a few moments of preparation really pay off. So observe how you're sitting. Observe how you feel in terms of your balance and levelness, and just hold on to your knees. Because, well, hopefully, just sitting in crossed legs isn't the kind of balance or levelness issue that is going to cause you to fall over, hopefully. But it's a more subtle action to correct the position of the seat bones. And yoga is full of what we call subtle actions, and we call them gross actions. That doesn't mean gross as in the Americanism, as in really disgusting, although sometimes maybe they are, I don't know. But gross is a big action, and subtle is more kind of fine-tuning action. So just sitting in cross legs, just observe the subtle actions that maybe you even do instinctively without thinking, to ensure that your balance is even. So just observe those subtle actions. Take a deep inhalation, filling the lungs from the bottom to the top, and emptying your lungs from the top to the bottom. Soften your jaw and your tongue and your throat. Release your knees, bring your hands into Namaste. Press the palms firmly together, lengthen from your armpits into your elbows. Allow your eyes to gently close. Just going back to the seat bones, observe the subtle actions that we need to make in order to stay level. So I made a big action I felt like I was kind of rolling back a little, so I kind of edged myself forwards. And now the actions feel subtle again. So just go down into the legs, into the hips, into the spine, observing those actions that we instinctively perform in order to stay upright. Just filling your lungs from the bottom to the top and emptying your lungs from the top to the bottom. Gently draw your chin down to meet your chest. Lift your chest up to meet your chin. Just spend a moment to seek to generate a gentle feeling of gratitude gratitude for something or someone or somewhere. Hold on to that feeling of abundance in the heart area. And then bring your hands down to meet the knees. Just have the palms facing upwards, drawing the shoulders down away from your ears. Bring the tip of the index finger with the tip of the thumb. Just gesture of wisdom and peacefulness. And then raise your head, allow your eyes to softly open and the focus to softly come back. Just hold onto your knees, elevate your heart area upwards. Again, just being conscious of those subtle actions that we need to employ to maintain our balance. So they're so subtle that you maybe barely acknowledge them. Lift up into the chest and then turn to the right side. So now it's probably more noticeable whether you are level or not. So aim for levelness of the hips. Draw your attention into the hips. Acknowledging whether they feel evenly connected to the floor, or does one feel heavier than the other. So maybe we need to employ some gross actions as opposed to the subtle ones. And then come back to the center. Just re-find your balance by just looking inwards and acknowledging the balance of the seat bones. Elevate the heart area upwards and then turn to the left, drawing the abdomen across. Again, going back to the seat bones. Maybe initially it's difficult to acknowledge the seat bones. So just spend a little time drawing your attention inwards. Just finding your balance. And then come back to the center. Just come down onto your knees, just sit back on your heels and come into Adho Mukha Virasana. So sitting back on your heels, then stretching forwards. Just before you stretch forwards, just address the balance of the seat bones on the heels. And then push the hands firmly into the floor so that you feel that you start to stretch the spine. Push the hands into the floor. Stretch the arms away from you as you come down lower, keeping the armpits open. Bring the forehead down. So again, just observe the deep actions and the subtle actions. So the gross actions, the deep actions, are a little more obvious. But just feel what your knees are doing, for example. Just draw your attention into your knees and lengthen from your knees into your toes. Lengthen from your knees into the hips. Draw the tailbone down to the floor. And then lengthen from the hips into the armpits, into the elbows, into the wrists, into the palms. They're all pretty much deep actions, gross actions. Just be in the pose and observe the breath. Observe the extension. Observe areas of dullness. And try to activate them. Engaging with the subtlety of the pose. Come up onto your knees, turn your toes under, and then come up into dog down. Just be in the pose and just acknowledge your internal balance. So it's rare if you come into the pose and everything feels like it's working evenly. So this morning, one leg, my left leg feels, I can't work out if it's engaged in the pose or not. So spend a little time observing and working to even out the activity, the action of the pose. So through gross actions to start off with, find that internal balance of action. Think about those dots at the tops of the thighs that we've been working with this week and push them through to the backs of the thighs. And then scan the physical body for areas of dullness and activate them. Keep the breath activated. Listen to the breath. And then step forwards, come up into a standing position. Just align your feet with the edge of the mat. Go into half Uttanasana with the blocks if there's problems with your back at the moment. Otherwise, we're going to go into full Uttanasana. So have the feet as wide apart as the mat, turning the toes in a little. Tighten the kneecaps, lift the thighs. Turn the thighs inwards, lift up into the chest. Elevate the heart area up to the ceiling. Elevate the arms to the ceiling, then hook the thumbs into the crease of the elbows. Come forwards, hinging at the hips. Release your hands. Reach down to the blocks if you're coming into half Uttanasana. Extending the spine away, or allow the top of the body to hang down in full Uttanasana. So just observe the action of the legs. Does it feel even? It's kind of rare if it does. So just do some work on the feeling of the pose, evening it out, making the left side a mirror of the right side, and vice versa. Identify which is your more eager leg and then get the less eager leg to follow. Same with the arms, same with the sides of the trunk, same with the breath, with the mind. So if you're in half uttanasana, keep extending the spine away. Keep pressing those dots at the tops of the thighs through to the backs of the thighs. So do that whichever uttanasana you're doing. Turning the fronts of the thighs inwards, just being conscious of your internal balance of action. And that's a continually shifting metric. So keep observing, keep the mind focused on the feeling of the pose. Okay, bring your hands down to the floor if you're in full uttanasana. Bring your hands into your hips and then bend the knees on the way up if you need to, and then come up into a standing position, into tadasana. So just stand in tadasana, have the inner edge of the feet together, lifting up into the chest. Just go back to that balance of action. So balance of action is different to kind of physical balance, but it's also the same. So go in and observe the gross actions and the subtle actions, just acknowledging the continual subtle shifts that we need to make in our feet in order to remain upright. So sometimes that is more than others, but we're not a rigid thing. We are naturally able to respond to the minutest of requirements in balance. So just keep your attention in your feet for the moment. Just observing those subtle actions, observing where your weight is, seeing if you can bring it into the heels, into both heels evenly. So you have to adjust the position of the legs to do that. Hit the shins back, turn the shins inwards. Tighten the kneecaps, press those dots of the thighs in towards the back of the thighs. Tuck the tailbone in. Just feel that balance of action. And there's going to be a fair amount of swaying, but that's normal. Take a deep inhalation in to bring your hands in towards your chest, and then step or jump your feet apart for trikonasana. Let's go nice and wide with your legs. And then turn your left toes in and your right leg all the way out. Turning these dots at the tops of the thighs, turning them outwards. Lift up into the chest, bring the chest to face the front. And then come over into trikonasana. And then come back. So as you go down, observe how the legs shift. So when you come down, maybe all of your weight just concentrates itself on that front foot and you forget about that back leg. Or maybe when you come down, you suddenly identify that this leg has to play a really strong part, has to really dig into the floor to maintain length in the spine. So just come in and out a couple of times. Just observe what happens in the feet. Can you bring levelness to your weight? So even though you're bringing your weight towards that front leg, can you avoid pushing all of the weight into that back leg? And then come back to the center one more time. Sorry. And then really activate both feet so that they're making even contact. They're evenly working. The legs are evenly working. Just come into the pose with consciousness. Reactivate that back leg if you need to. Take the weight away from the back leg from the front leg, sorry, by activating that back leg. And then come back to the center, swap the feet around, turn the right toes in, the left leg and foot all the way out, and then just come in and out a couple of times again. Just observe how the feet and how the legs have to accommodate the transfer of your weight. Just a couple of times coming in and out, and then settle into the pose, but keep that observation, keep the legs working evenly. Then just address the position of the hips and the spine, but it's working from that internal balance. And then come back to the center, bring the feet parallel, and then step or jump the feet back together. And then come back into tadasana and just again observe your balance. Observe how you need to shift and how you can consciously shift to maintain your balance. Okay, we're going to do ardha chandrasana. So you might want to block on either side of your mat, just to, if you might want that to reach to, just make sure you're not going to jump on it. Just being trikonasana. Just feel your balance, just reset your balance. Bring your attention into your feet. Observe how your feet are connecting to the ground. Bring your arms out nice and wide into the chest, and then go nice and wide with your legs. Turn your left toes in, your right leg and foot all the way out, and then come over, maintaining that consciousness of the activity of the legs and the feet. Extending up into the hips, into the spine. So just find your balance, using that back leg to really underpin your balance. Because when that back leg's up in the air in a moment, it still needs to help underpin the balance. Underpin, not unpin. Bring the top hand onto the hip, bend that front leg and then hop in a little. Bring the hand onto the floor on the little toe side of the foot. If the floor feels too far away, then use a block. Put a block underneath your hand. Have your hand about a foot away from your foot on the little toe side, and then really activate that back leg, that left leg. Keep it straight as you raise it up, straightening the standing leg. Feel like you're still doing trikonasana. That back leg paying as much action into the pose as the standing. Turn the abdomen to face the front, draw the shoulder, that lifted shoulder towards the back of the room, and then if you can, raise the arm or just keep your hand on your hip. Breathe. It's difficult. I can't stretch out this top leg, this top arm because of the ceiling. Actually a bit destabilizing. Okay, come down, back into trikonasana, and then come back up, and then step or jump your feet back together, come back into tadasana. Good, so just observe your balance now. Breathe in through the nose and out through the nose, listening to the breath. Just observe how your breath has changed. So step your feet apart or jump your feet apart, turn the right toes in, the left leg and foot all the way out. Just acknowledging balance and the action of the legs, and then come over into trikonasana on the left side. So find your internal balance. Drop the top hand onto the hip, bend the front leg, hop in, bring your hand onto the floor on the little toe side. Keep that back leg lifted, straighten the standing foot, standing leg. Rotate the chest to the front and up to the ceiling, and if you can, reach up. Keep that back leg really firm. Keep your attention inwards. And then come back down into trikonasana. Just finding the balance in the action. And then come back to the centre. Bring the feet parallel. And then step or jump the feet back together. And then come back into tadasana. Just refinding your balance. Just using the breath to re-stabilise. Good, and then come down onto your knees. Bring your hands shoulder width apart. Step your feet back, bring your feet hip width apart. And then come back up into svanasana. Going back to that observation of your internal balance, the balance of action, the balance of breath, the balance of effort. Just let the head hang down. But observe the balance of action. Balance of effort, the balance of breath. And then come down onto your knees, sit back on your heels, just observe the energy that you've released through your practice. So maybe your body feels inundated with energy. See if you can adjust the position of the heels underneath the seat bones for balance, drawing the heels outwards away from each other. Just observing your internal physical balance, balance of effort and action and breath. So by balance of breath, do you breathe evenly into both lungs, evenly out of both lungs? Just draw your attention inwards. Come forward into Adho Mukha Virasana. So each time you move the body, maybe your brain has to catch up in terms of where it is in 3 dimensions. So just give it that time. So we don't just do positions, we try and draw the attention inwards. Observing the subtle actions, the gross actions. Identifying the balance. Seeing the body in 3 dimensions through the feeling of the pose. Drawing your consciousness consciously into areas that don't demand attention in the same way as others. Okay, push your hands into the floor underneath your shoulders and then come up. Just back onto your heels, just again observing your energy. And then just come down onto your back. Have a belt where you can reach it for supta padangusthasana. So have a belt for your leg. Just come down onto the floor. Just pull your feet in towards each other to start off with. If your head rolls back, then you can have a blanket underneath your head. Just initially, just try to bring the feet as close to the seat bones as you can. Shuffling the seat bones into the feet. And then get your belt, keep the left foot where it is, and then hook the right foot, hook the ball joint of the right foot into the belt. So we don't always come into the pose with both legs bent, but actually what it does to come into the pose this way is it gives you better access into that lifted leg. So the classical poses with a straight leg on both legs, but this just gives you a little more access. So feel how the seat bones connect to the ground. Just raise and the lower back, the lumbar area. Does it feel like the lifted leg side feels heavier than the bent leg side? So try and find that balance of action there. Work from the hip up into the kneecap, into the heel of that lifted leg. And then observe how maybe that changes your connection with the lumbar. Draw your belly button towards your spine. Now slide your heel along the mat of that left leg, so that left leg straightens. Doing that with consciousness of the balance of the pose. Feel the back of the leg touching the mat. Try and get the back of the thigh to touch the mat with that straight leg. Just listen to the body. Observe what is happening in the hips. Maybe the lifted leg feels higher up in terms of the hips than the non-lifted leg. So try and draw that top of the thigh, rotate it outwards a little towards the hip. Find levelness underneath the seat bones, underneath the sacrum and the tailbone and the lumbar. Bring both hands onto the right. Take both ends of the belt with the right hand. Rest your left hand on your hip. Just feel that you can bring levelness into the lumbar spine on the mat. And then bring that right leg out to the side. At first, of course, it's going to shift the balance of how your back connects to the ground. Bring that out to the side, in line, that foot out in line with your ear if you can. The foot shouldn't be on the floor. And then really activate that back leg like you're doing trikonasana. Try and bring some levelness of action underneath the lower back. So it will feel like that right side of the back really presses firmly. But then you've got to really lengthen deeply into that left leg to level out as much as you can the way that the lumbar connects to the ground, or the back of the hips connects to the ground. Breathe even deep inhalations and exhalations. And then release the leg, unhook the leg, and then just rest down into the floor for a moment. Now those legs quite possibly feel significantly different. Maybe it feels like your right leg is lower into the floor than the left leg. So just observe that balance. And try and reset your balance. And then pull both feet in towards the seat bones. And then this time, hook the belt around the ball joint of the left foot. Hold on to one end of the belt in each hand and work to straighten out that leg. So straighten the leg. You can always give yourself a bit more rope like this if you need it. But aim to really activate that lifted leg and to observe how your lower back, the back of the hips and the lumbar connect to the ground. Can you make them connect with evenness? Just drawing your attention inwards. And then slide that right heel along the mat, pushing the heel into the floor as you go, and then bring that right leg really firmly down. Try and get the back of the thigh, the back of the calf to make contact with the mat. And then just reset the pose. Just feel the levelness or otherwise of the hips and work to address it by just lengthening that lifted hip away from the armpit. Feel the balance of action in the hips, the physical balance on the floor of the hips. Try and even it out by activating that right leg really deeply. Take hold of both ends of the belt with the left hand. Bring your right hand onto the hip, that right hip, and then bring the leg out to the side, bending your elbow in line with your shoulder. Bring that out to the side. And then go back to the balance of the torso, balance of the hips. Activate that right leg really deeply, like you're doing trikonasana. That right leg is the back leg. So keep the level of action even. Keep the physical balance on the mat even across the hips. So you have to really activate that right leg in order to find that internal balance. And then bring that leg back to the center. Just unhook the foot and then just release the legs down into the floor, and hopefully they feel a little more even this time. Let's bring the legs into supta, padangusthasana, soles of the feet together, the knees apart, and just rest yourself into the mat. Feeling the opening of the hips. Just feeling the levelness of the physical body on the mat. So we try to draw our attention inwards. We don't just inundate the body with energy. We also aim to inundate the body with consciousness. Every pore of the skin becomes an eye. Looking inwards, looking outwards, but particularly looking inwards. Every pore of the skin becomes an eye. Just observe your balance. Observe the subtle actions and the gross actions. So we're drawing our attention inwards, pratyahara. So that doesn't mean that we go in on our brain, and that can be not a particularly positive thing to do all the time. Sometimes we become overly self-critical, and that is never a particularly healthy thing. But drawing our attention into the physical body, on the other hand, becoming conscious of the physicality of a pose, that is a little break away from the everyday. That gives us opportunity to really become energized, using the body like a sponge for energy. Feeling of that in-breath permeating through the lining of the lungs, and into the blood. Filling the body with the positive energy it requires to perform its function optimally. Draw your knees together, just hold onto the edges of the mat, pull your knees in toward your chest, and then raise your legs up for viparita karanhi. So observing the effort it requires to keep the legs lifted, you can always put a block underneath your sacrum area if it's difficult to lift the legs. Identify the balance of effort. Keep your attention in the physical body being a sponge to imbibe the energy of the breath. The energy of the universe coming into the lungs and then circulating around the physical body. So our practice begins to take a more meditative state. Just a consciousness of being within the body, keeping the mind quiet, just in observational mode. And then bend your knees, bring your legs down onto the floor, just come up onto your elbows, make sure you're in a really good straight line down the centre of the mat, and then get your blanket for underneath your head. And then just allow yourself to release into the floor. Let the body completely relax, unhooking the muscles of the arms and the legs, letting the body feel heavy on the ground. And out of that heaviness comes a distinct feeling of energetic lightness radiating from the bones into the muscles and the organs, and the flesh and the skin. So be conscious of that feeling of genuine positive energy, filling the body, using your in-breath and your out-breath to distribute that feeling of lightness evenly to the toes, to the fingers, to the top of the head, and everywhere in between. Trying to balance out that energy using the breath. Basking in that feeling of energetic lightness. And then when you're ready to disturb yourself, just wriggle your toes, wriggle your fingers. Just bend your knees, bring your knees in toward your chest. Just have a little rock from side to side, from top to bottom. Just a gentle massage on the spine. And then roll over onto your right side. Just stay down for a breath or two. And then straighten out. Top leg, come back up into cross legs. Just hold onto your knees for a moment. Just lift up into the chest. Just take a deep inhalation and then turn to the right side with the exhalation, and using each subsequent exhalation to turn a little more deeply. And then come back to the center, hold on to your knees and then turn to the left. And then gently come back to the center. Just hold onto your knees, bring your hands into Namaste. Press the palms firmly together. Close your eyes if you haven't done, and draw your breath in through your nose down into the abdomen. Be conscious of the energy that you have released through your practice. This morning, that good, positive, healthy flow of clean energy that the extensions and the forward bends and the twists and the inversions bring to the body and to the mind. Draw your chin down to meet your chest. Just spend a moment to acknowledge the positive energy you have created inside. And then send some of that positive energy out into the world. And then release the backs of your hands down toward your knees, palms facing upwards, connecting the tip of the index finger with the tip of the thumb. Just a gesture of wisdom and peacefulness we can carry into our day. And then raise your head, allow your eyes to softly open and the focus to softly come back. Thank you very much. So hopefully you feel like you're really giving yourself some good internal balance, but also just inundated the body with positive energy. So thank you very much for joining me.